Okay. It's not on mute though.
Not on mute.
All right, break it. Let's record it.
Okay.
You better take a break now.
Chairman, we're now live on YouTube.
Thank you, Jeanette. Good evening, member. We're still waiting for Councillor Danny and Councillor Rush. I'll give them a couple more minutes, see if they're
Chairman,
waiting.
Councillor Rush is logging in at the moment.
Is he okay, Anne? Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, we'll let Councillor Rush log in, then we'll start then.
I've just had a message, Chairman, from Councillor Danny. He's struggling to log in.
Thank you, Yvonne. It would seem Brian's having the same problem as well, but
Yes.
are they in the waiting room, Pippa? For you, can you see if they're waiting, or Jeanette?
No, they're not. No. I know Councillor Danny has had technical problems recently. I'll try giving them both a ring.
If you would, please.
He said he thinks he needs a password, but I've let him know that you just click the link, so I don't know what the issue is at the moment.
Thank you, Anne. Apologies to all our viewers. We're just having some minor technical difficulties with a couple of members at the moment.
Do we need to play some music, Paul?
Well, as long as it's not some of that rubbish stuff you hear on the phones when they put you on hold. I actually quite miss Fleetwood Mac's Albatross. I used to like that.
We could play a video of a previous meeting or something like that.
Well, we could do. We could do.
I think Albatross is better, actually, isn't it?
Well, it's probably more exciting than some of them I've watched.
I think so, but it does reveal our age, doesn't it, really?
Well, I suppose, yeah. But then again, you see, you can't beat good music, can you?
You can't, no.
I mean, I quite like a bit of Mozart and Bach, but I wasn't born around the time that they were going, you know.
Oh, really? I
know I looked like I was, but I wasn't, I can assure you. Have we had any response, Jeanette? Have we got anything, Pippa? No?
There's no one in the waiting room.
Thank you. Well, I'll give him a couple more minutes and I think we'll have to start. Have you heard anything from them, Jeanette?
Chairman, I've just given the Councillor Danny's trying to connect on his phone, and
Right.
I've given him again the passcode and
Yeah.
ID number, so he should be in shortly. I haven't yet made contact with Councillor Rush, so I'll do that now.
Okay, thank you. We ought to have one of those things like they have at the cinema, don't we? The short intermission things with them little public information films and stuff that we could plug in.
We could also do with someone coming round with an ice cream if we're going to have an intermission.
Well, yeah, I suppose that would be that's a good idea. It might be a long round though, wouldn't it?
Just a bit.
Well, it depends on the range of ice creams, doesn't it, Chairman? I mean, I do like a choc ice. I mean, I'm not having those tutti fruity things.
Oh, right. Well, okay. Each to their own, Stephen.
I know. I don't like that flashlight being flashed in my eyes either. Do you remember that at the cinema?
Oh, in the cinema, yes. Put that flag out. Yeah.
Councillor Danny is here, I think.
Thank you, Pippa.
Hello, Mr. Chairman. Do you hear me? It's Anton.
I can hear you, Anton. Yes, I can hear you.
Good, good. So I'm in. Thank you.
You sound like a spaceman. Tony's the galaxy.
I wish.
So it's just Councillor Rush now then.
By the way, Mr. Chairman, I cannot switch on my camera, but I can see you all and I can hear everything. So
that's okay then, Councillor Danny. You'll just, if you wish to speak, you just have to
raise my hand.
Right. Well, if you can do that, yeah.
That's it. I will.
Thank you. Just Brian now then. How are we getting on with Councillor Rush, Jeanette? Have we been able to contact him? Jeanette, are you there?
Councillor Rush is joining, Chair.
Thank you, Pippa.
He's just connecting, Chairman. Sorry about that.
That's all right, Jeanette. Thank you very much. There you go, Brian. We can see you now. I can't hear you, but I can see you.
Hello, I can hear somebody talking.
Yeah, we can hear you now.
Well, you're lucky you can't see me, aren't you?
I can see you as well.
Okay. Sorry about that, Mr. Chairman. I've had technical problems all afternoon.
That's all right. Councillor Rush, Councillor Danny had similar problems connecting as well. Okay, then. Now we're all here. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to tonight's meeting. I'm sorry for the late start of the Boston Town Area Committee meeting. My name is Councillor Paul Goodale. I am the chairman of this committee, and Councillor Stephen Woodliff is the vice chairman. I would like to remind members that you need to register to speak with the raised hand button only. Please do not simply wave. I will invite members to speak in order that they have registered to speak. As is usual, to ensure that members of the public are fully aware of who is attending this meeting, at this point of business is to take a roll call of members. Pippa, please can you do that?
Thank you, Chair. If everybody could indicate their presence, please. Councillor Anton Danny.
Present.
Councillor Andorian.
Present.
Councillor Deborah Evans.
Present.
Councillor Martin Griggs.
Present.
Councillor Neil Hasty.
Present.
Councillor Martin Howard.
Present.
Councillor Brian Rush.
Present.
Councillor Yvonne Stevens.
Present.
Councillor Stephen Woodliff.
Present.
And the officers in attendance tonight are Phil Perry, Assistant Director for Supportive Services and Partnerships and Lead Officer for this committee.
Present.
Chris Allen, Assistant Director for Regulation.
Good evening, Chairman. Good evening, members.
Good evening.
Adrian Sibley, Chief Finance Officer and Section 151 Officer.
Present.
Tim Sampson, Accountancy Manager for Revenue and Systems.
Present.
Jeanette Collier, Democratic Service Officer.
Present.
And myself, Pippa Rose, Democratic Service Apprentice. That concludes the roll call. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Pippa. We will now move into part one of this evening's agenda. And on the preliminary items, do we have any apologies for absence, please, Pippa?
Yes, Chair. We have 3 from Councillor Alison Austin, Councillor Van Edge and Councillor Alan Bell.
Thank you very much. To receive declarations of interest, do any members have any interest to declare items on the agenda this evening, please?
There's no one indicating, Chair.
Thank you, Pippa. Are there any questions from members of the public?
There are none, Chair.
Thank you. That concludes the preliminary items. We will now move on to part 2 of the agenda. The first item on the agenda is regulatory and safeguarding Boston's economy recommendations from the Task and Finish Group. Christian Allen, Assistant Director, will present the report. If you would present the report, Christian, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Good evening. Just to, it'd be useful perhaps because the report is very brief. It's only 2 recommendations in your agenda. So I'll just provide a little bit of context just to remind members how we arrived at this point today. Back in June 2019, the Environment and Performance Committee agreed to set up a Task and Finish group to look at regulating and safeguarding Boston's economy. The Task and Finish group was set up because of concerns that have been raised by some members about antisocial behaviour and crime and disorder in the town, and the Environment and Performance Committee agreed to set up the Task and Finish group to look into that. There are some members on BTAC this evening who are part of that Task and Finish group, so forgive me, those members will know the journey that we've been on, but obviously there's a lot of members on the committee this evening that won't. On the 3rd of November, after the Task and Finish group concluded their work, this was the 3rd November 2020, obviously there have been some delays due to the pandemic, EMP committee agreed to accept all 13 recommendations from the Task and Finish group, and they agreed as part of those recommendations to refer them to Cabinet for approval. So of those 13 recommendations, 12 and 13 are what are in your agenda pack this evening, and EMP recommended that these be referred to BTAC for consideration. So if we fast forward then to Cabinet that was held in December last year, again, Cabinet accepted all of the recommendations that had been passed to them by the Environment and Performance Committee and delegated me, the Assistant Director of Regulation, to take forward those recommendations in consultation with the relevant portfolio holder, and in respect of recommendations 12 and 13 in consultation with the chair of this committee. So that brings us right up to date now. So following my discussions with your chair prior to this meeting, it was agreed that we would table recommendations 12 and 13 this evening to satisfy the request of Cabinet, and then to get some agreement from BTAC on how we might take them forward. So the request before committee tonight is if, first of all, you agree to accept these recommendations into your work programme. The next stage for me will be then to prepare a more detailed report of options and costings that would be involved in delivering those recommendations for you, and to provide those to your meeting on the 24th of March, so that you can then give proper consideration in terms of how you as a committee want those 2 recommendations addressed. So I'll leave it there, Chairman, and obviously I'm happy to take any questions, but what I need tonight really is just clarity. Do you accept these recommendations, BTAC, to take forward? And if you do, then I will bring a report back on options to the 24th of March meeting. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Christian. Thank you for that. I will I'll open the meeting now to comments and questions from members. Any members wish to ask any questions or make a comment? Councillor Hasty.
Hello. Most of my residents who live around the park have been complaining for
well, since I've been elected and before, about the antisocial behaviour in the park. It's an ongoing problem, and it took them a while, but then they started calling 101, and the police started getting involved. And it's still going on. But about the recommendations, I don't think there should be a trial period, because during the first lockdown, the park was closed at the beginning and the incidents dropped off to next to nothing or nothing at all. And then as soon as the park gates reopened, the incidents skyrocketed. And during the task and finish group, Inspector Fran Harrod, if she's listening, I'm sorry if I misquote her on this, but she said on at least one occasion, the local PCSO got sick and tired of the amount of calls about antisocial behaviour in the park. So he cleared the park, shut the gates, and there were no more incidents that night. So that shows that locking the park gates at night will stop the antisocial behaviour in the park. And because of the first lockdown, I don't think there should be a trial period. So I'd like to put a motion forward that there's no trial period. We go straight into locking the park gates at night, and that BTAC covers the entire cost. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Councillor Hasty. I would take that as a motion. I'll wait a second, but if members want to come later on, that's fine. We'll hold that there. Councillor, sorry, Jeanette.
Chairman, I was just going to suggest, rather than a motion this evening, what Christian's asking the committee to decide is if they accept the recommendations onto the work programme, for him to bring back a report, and the members could then discuss whether it should be a trial period or not, and so on. That's what I was going to suggest.
Well, that's fine, Jeanette. I appreciate that. But if Councillor Hasty wants us to also consider no trial period, then we'll need to know the cost of that as well, won't we?
I can.
We accept these.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I absolutely agree with what Jeanette has said, and I can, as part of the report, if they accept, if committee accepts the proposals to move these recommendations on, then that I can include that as part of the report, that we go straight into a service without a trial period.
Okay, then. Thank you for that, Christian. That will clear that up then. Stephen, Councillor Woodley.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes. Thank you, Chairman. I've been inclined to stick to what we've been asked to do. I would like to know how much it's going to cost, because Orville is saying and BTAC should pick up the entire cost of it. We need to know how much it is so we know what we're dealing with. And my view is you always work out the costing of something before you do it, and we don't have any figures in front of us as to how much it's going to cost. So my view is go for the costing, and then and we can look to see what it is, and then we can go forward from that point. But I always think it's best to work within the parameters set out by the officers, which we have in front of us. So yeah, we go ahead with what they've suggested, 12 and 13. We go down that pathway, but we need to have some costings, particularly number 13, requesting funding of a service for Central Park to address the ongoing ASB in the park. But of course, that's assuming it's during the day, which means we'll have to have monitoring of the park during the day. That could prove to be very expensive. So we have to be very careful about this because we have limited funds. I know that we have quite a bit of money in the bank at the present minute, but I think we're going into a very, very hard stage in the near future, because I think as a result of the a recession that's around, and will be a recession around, as I read in the press at the present minute, we need to be sure that people will be able to fund all these things. So before we take on costs, we need to have the funding of the costs of the project in front of us. Once we've got those, then we know what we're dealing with, and we can then look at our budget and see whether they can fund it. So thank you, Chairman. Okay.
Yes, that's fine, Stephen. Thank you. I mean, that's why it's come in this form, to be honest. I mean, when Christian raised it with me, I did actually point out that BTAC had not long considered this very point and decided against it. So that's why it's come in this form, so that if we accept this to go into the work programme, then the costings and that will all follow on. if we don't accept the premise, then there's no point in them doing the work. Effectively, that's why it's coming in this form. So I appreciate what you're saying, and it's not actually to decide this evening whether we do this or not. It's just whether to put it on our work program and the costs will follow.
Yes.
If that's clear. Thanks, Stephen. Anyway,
that's my view. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Yvonne, Councillor Stevens, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Councillor Woodliff has basically taken the words out of my mouth, what I was going to say, because when Councillor Hastie said cover all the costs, I thought, oh my God, you know, it's an unknown number and we can't commit to any unknown number. That would be foolhardy for the council. So I would agree to take this forward, but I do have a preference, and my preference would be to do a trial period with all the costings involved in that, and then let's sit down and sharpen our pencils and see how best we can take it forward. But I'm not against it, but I would prefer to go for a trial period rather than straight into taking on all the responsibility of doing this. That's my thoughts. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Yvonne. Martin, Councillor Griggs, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First of all, I'd like to commend Councillor Hastie. I know how passionate he's been about this project, but I do agree completely with what Councillor Woodliff and Councillor Stevens said. It would be completely irresponsible of us to take on a project without knowing the costs. And also, I believe the trial period's a good thing because it gives us a chance to analyse the data. Every decision we make should be driven by as much information as possible. I have friends who live very close to the park and use it after work for exercise. And what I am worried about with doing the trial is that potentially when they get home from work, the park's locked. If we're still in lockdown and they can't go anywhere else, where do people go and exercise? So I don't know whether it would be in the remit of BTAC, and I'm sure one of the officers can let us know. But I completely agree antisocial behaviour needs to be addressed. But if memory serves, it wasn't that long ago we put better cameras in the park. So potentially an option we might want to look at, obviously cost dependent, would be maybe hiring somebody to monitor the cameras in BTAC area on top of the guys we already have. Because as we know, the guys we already have operate not just Boston Borough cameras, but other cameras under the same contract. Potentially, is there any room or scope for hiring someone to monitor the BTAC area cameras and therefore hopefully decreasing ASB behaviour across BTAC, or at least being able to point the police in that direction pretty quickly so anything's broken up before it escalates?
Yeah, well, thank you, Martin. That's a point well made. I mean, there's also the option of having improved lighting in the park. There's all sorts of other things we could do, but I mean, that's the whole idea of it coming to BTAC as a whole, isn't it? Councillor Danny, Anton.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think what Councillor Woodliff said, Councillor Yvonne and Councillor Martin, I really appreciate the concerns of Councillor Hastie, but I think we cannot jump the gun and go straight and start locking the gates now without knowing what's the cost and how it's going to be working, who's going to do the job, what we're going to do with, who's going to be designated to have the keys. There's a lot of things to think about. So I think we should go with the recommendations. If I may probably propose, look at the recommendations at the financial costs, and then we can think about how to treat this issue. Because from my point of view, I don't want BTAC to be a financial support to the council, and we will start paying for everything coming through, you know, and it will not be fair. And I think our budget will not allow us to do that. So therefore, I would like to move the recommendations as it is. If somebody would like to probably second me, that will be great. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Woodliff. Thank you, Councillor Woodliff.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Stephen. Councillor Dorian, Anne, please.
Thank you, Chairman. First of all, if I could say to Christian, it really would have helped having all of the recommendations from the E&P Task and Finish group in the report, because I had to go and find them, and it was just a pain in the neck. And it would, because I like to read things in the round, I like to have context and background and understand how this fits in with all the other recommendations they were making. So that's just a point I would make. And I know that I'm saying it in good faith. What I'd like to ask you then, Christian, is what sort of service under point 13? What kind of service is it that E&P discussed? Oh, sorry, the Task and Finish discussed. Is it just cameras? Is it personnel? Is it security measures of some kind? What exactly are you thinking of?
So I don't think.
Thank you. As you know, the Task and Finish group met on many occasions with many of our partners, and lots of proposals were discussed and captured, and that's why the recommendation has been quite broadly worded, so that it gives us an option to look at a whole, not to be too constrained, and look to all sorts of services that might improve monitoring and prevention of ASB. So that might be anything from a sort of a paid for park warden service right up to maybe thinking about extending the roles of the BTAC operatives, or contracting out sort of support. So it was purposely left open so that we could bring back a number of options that might fit that purpose and give BTAC, fully cognizant of all the costs, the opportunity to select which one they felt would best suit their purposes. So yeah.
Okay, that answers my question. Thank you.
Brilliant.
So Chairman, what I'd like to suggest is that with the we do this work. The opposite argument to what Councillor Griggs put forward, that he's got friends who live nearby who exercise in the park, and by golly, our residents love exercising in there, and I fully endorse the fact that they take advantage of everything that we've put in there. However, I know people who live near the park who are tearing the hair out, not during COVID, obviously, but they're having a really hard time with the fact that the park's open all night. I know a couple who've lived there for nearly 60 years opposite the park, and things have really changed for them over the past couple of years. So what I would like to urge, and obviously it's not part of the recommendation, but I would like the committee to request that Christian brings the costings back to the next meeting. One of the frustrating things about local government is it works so slowly, and obviously Task and Finish met way last year, went to Cabinet in December, now we're looking at it in February. So I really think the costings need to come back in March for a decision to be made in March to be able to hit the ground running very quickly after that.
Yeah, thank you. And I mean, that's obviously what Christian will aim to do, because if we do make a decision to fund this, then obviously we need to include it in our budget, or whatever cost there be, whatever we decide. But I mean, there is obviously we have to decide if we're going to do it any or all of them in the first instance. So yeah, I agree with that. That's fine. Anyway, Neil, are you happy with the fact that Christian has said basically what you're requesting will actually come within the costings in the next meeting? Are you happy with that?
Yeah, it is. Would it be possible to get a quote for electronic automated gate locking system? So we look at both someone locking it manually, and then maybe fitting up some sort of electronic lock with a press button on the inside if anyone gets trapped inside, and then a code to unlock it in case emergency services have to get in there, because that might reduce the cost with having someone manually being employed to lock and unlock them.
Yes, is a simple answer. We've already looked at that and started getting some quotes together. So that can absolutely be one of the options. We just have to be satisfied that it works operationally, and that we don't end up trapping people in the park and then having to deploy resources to let them out. So but yes, without going into the detail, that's not what we're here to do tonight. That will be one of the considerations that we'll look at and put forward.
Thank you, Christian. Right, well, there are no more hands. It has been moved and seconded then that we accept the recommendations. And also just, is that basically agreed by the committee? Can I take the vote, please, Pippa or Jeanette, whichever one of you is going to do it, please?
Yes, Chairman, I was just going to say, just for clarity, that so the committee accept the recommendations onto the work programme for the 24th of March, and for Christian to come back with a detailed report with costings and options. Pippa, would you like to take the vote?
Thank you. If members could say if they are for, against or abstain. Councillor Anton Danny?
For.
Councillor Andorian?
For.
Councillor Deborah Evans?
For.
Yourself, Chair?
For.
Councillor Martin Griggs?
For.
Councillor Neil Hasty?
For.
Councillor Martin Howard?
For.
Councillor Brian Rush?
For.
Councillor Yvonne Stevens?
For.
And Councillor Stephen Woodliff.
Or
That's carried, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Pippa. Thank you, Jeanette.
Sorry, Chair, if I may. If I could just take you back to the minutes of the last meeting.
Yeah.
That's my fault. I didn't include it on your notes, but
Well, it's my fault. I should have actually remembered. It's sort of something we do all the time, isn't it?
thank you.
Well, I'll go back to that then, Pippa, for the preliminaries about the minutes of the last two meetings, isn't it?
Yes, thank you.
So could we have members' agreement to sign the minutes of the last two meetings? If they have any objections or any recommendations they wish to make, that would be the meeting on the 26th of November and the meeting on the 16th of December. Do I have the committee's permission to sign those minutes? Anyone wish to comment? If no one wishes to comment, we'll take that as your agreement. Okay. Thank you, Pippa. Thank you for that. Sorry about
that. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Stephen.
Do we have any update on actions from the last meeting regarding the police and so on? Has anything come through to you from that?
Well, the police, there's going to be a briefing, isn't there?
Right.
With regard to the outcome of that meeting, and there's going to be a briefing for all members of the council. I believe, is it early February or next week? Is it? Do you know? Can you remember?
Yeah, Chairman. There's a briefing on the joint protocol on dealing with illegal gypsy encampments or illegal traveller encampments on Monday evening. I think it's at 6 o'clock.
But that's something slightly different, isn't it?
Well, it's what we actually agreed to look at, Stephen, isn't it?
Sorry?
It's what we actually agreed to look at.
Yes, but it's that only came out of the meeting, isn't it? The fact that supposedly we hadn't signed up to this protocol, which I think is something of a get out by the police, really.
Well, possibly so, but that's going to be the follow up to this. I mean, if there's anything comes out of that which BTAC feels we need to consider it further, and then we'll have to look at that. I actually think it's a matter for the council as a whole rather than BTAC personally, but other members may disagree. But I do think that it's something that we can look at it after this briefing, and if you feel it needs to come back to BTAC, or any members feel it needs to come back to BTAC, then if they just indicate that to myself or you, we'll put it on the agenda for a future meeting.
I'd like to be on the agenda for future meeting. And I also like the new Chief Constable to appear before us, just to show us exactly what he's made of and what he's going to do for us. It's a bit harsh, isn't it? But I'm you know, we've got a new Chief Constable. Let's see what he can do. I am a bit concerned with some of the things that were said by the police at the last meeting, pointing out that local criminals could take advantage of the presence of travellers, saying that they would get the blame for their crime, for the crimes. That's rather a slight against the local population, really, because I think local population are not like that. And I think that it was a slight against Boston, I think, really, which is unacceptable.
All right, okay, no, I take your point. That's fair enough, and we'll put that onto the work. We'll look at putting it onto the work program if that's.
Yeah, Boston people are decent people. They shouldn't be treated in that manner. Anyway, I'll withdraw at that point.
Chairman, I was just going to confirm it is 6 o'clock on Monday, and that Chief Inspector James Trafford and Chief Superintendent Chris Davison will be there. They were both at your meeting in November.
Yes,
and they're coming on Monday.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Jeanette. Thank you, Stephen.
Thank you.
Okay, then we will now move to agenda item number 2, which is the proposed BTAC budget for 21-22 and the forecast of 25-26. The report will be presented by myself as chairman of the committee and Adrian Sibley, Chief Finance Officer and Section 151 Officer.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, hopefully this is a fairly straightforward report because Tim did do a presentation on Monday at a mental way day. Tim is also here tonight if you've got any difficult questions to ask. We have more or less the same people on the call tonight as we did on Monday, so I don't propose to go through it in great detail. Safe to say that what we are proposing tonight is that the committee recommends to the council that you approve a budget of 731,479 and a precept of £76.95. The precept represents a 1.91% increase, and this equates to £1.48 per average Band D property for the year. The only other thing I can add to it is that the forecast will leave you with an opening reserve of £120,000. Aside from that, I'm happy to take any questions or comments, Chair, or Tim is with me as well to answer any as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Adrian. Councillor Dorian, Anne.
Thank you, Chair. Appreciate it. So my first question is, I don't mind if it's Adrian or Tim, the £1.91 increase, what is, how much would that bring in to BTAC across the board from all the properties?
So the 1.91% increase represents around about £14,000 worth of additional income. So it's roughly about £7,000 for every 1% increase.
7,000 per 1%. Thank you. Okay, I've got a couple of other questions on the report. That was just that one on that. So I'd like, Mr. Chair, if with your permission, I've got a couple of questions looking at Appendix 1. So I didn't ask a lot of questions at the briefing, Mr. Sibley, because I actually believe that that we should do this in public and not behind closed doors. So that's why I was quite reserved and in the background at the briefing. But I did study the papers, and there were some things that left me quite shocked. So I'm always shocked. This isn't new. I am always shocked at the cost of the toilets that we provide for the people of Boston. And I think if you stopped the average woman in the street and the average man in the street and said that the 3 toilets that we run cost us circa £150,000, I think they'd be really shocked. And I like to think if I went into business with Councillor Howard or Councillor Evans and said, let's clean 3 toilets, I think we could do it for a lot less. So I just want to pick up some of the costs that that you've itemised and just drill down a little bit. So on page 30 of the report, which is page 2 of the appendix, the finance charge under support services, is that a kind of a levy against what the finance department does for BTAC?
Yes, that will be for things like processing creditors, payments, that type of thing, and all the sort of thing that a finance team do. So part of it will be Tim's time for preparing the accounts and that type of thing.
Okay, and how do you calculate that?
Tim will have to provide more detail on that, but I suspect it's either historic or it's based on a time apportionment basis. But I'll invite Tim in on that one.
Thank you, Adrian. It's a combination of both. It's historic purposes and it's been incremental, but fundamentally it's based upon the allocation of time to the BTAC in itself and then apportioned down within BTAC. So it's an allocation of all the finance team, etc.
Okay. So I'm just curious, do you like bill us, like, you know, like if you engage a solicitor, they bill you like every time they pick up the phone or write a letter? How do you work that out?
Well, it'd be a central service charge, so it'd be all the associated costs of the staffing within the finance function. So yes, ultimately everything would go in one big pot and then be divisible by all the various services within the council. So it's the share belonging to BTAC.
Okay, thank you. Is it all right if I carry on, Chair?
Yeah, by all means, Anne. Yeah, please.
Thank you. Under personnel and training, I was quite astounded that that's just shy of £5,000. Is that for HR or is that for training courses that the toilet operatives go on or something?
Tim, you're about to answer.
Well, that's exactly on the same basis as the finance. Predominantly, it is personnel department and then additional training as well.
Who would the training be for, Tim? For your staff, HR staff, or for the people that clean the toilets?
For the HR staff and for the direct cleaning as well.
See, I'd like to drill down into that, because why are we, if we are buying a service from HR, then that should be the cost of the service. We shouldn't be paying to train people to provide a service.
Okay.
Well, the training is substantially for the HR team. So it really is the heading of human resources with training for all staff, and it's that total cost which is the portion then allocated to BTAC public conveniences. Any other training of employee staff within public convenience would go under employee costs. So it could be a substantial amount in any given year, and it isn't in this year, but that would go within employee costs as well.
You don't seem to get my point, or perhaps you do and I don't understand your answer. What I'm saying is, if we're buying a service from HR, and I'm not sure how much of a service we need from HR, I wouldn't have thought it was £5,000 worth once we've recruited. I can imagine recruitment might be expensive, but once we bought a service, why are we paying to train those staff that we're buying a service from? That's the bit I can't compute.
I think the training is really just in the title itself. The department is called HR and Training.
Ah.
So I could put a line through the training element and just and personnel, just put human resources department.
Ah, well, I did ask if it was training courses, and you said yes. So that's different then. I understand it now. Thank you. And again, the performance and improvement. Will you talk to me about that? And we've got just over £4,000 worth of performance and improvement. So what does that buy us?
Again, how I would explain this is there is a performance and improvement team or service area, and is the recharge of that team to this service.
And what do they do though for us?
Well, I suppose the question that you're really asking is, can I explain the basis for that apportionment? And I can't off the top of my head, and I doubt that Tim can, but it's certainly something I will come back on later on in the week if that's okay, and I'll show you a breakdown of it all.
Yeah, I'd love that. Thank you, Mr. Sibley. I really appreciate that. The other thing, just going back up that column slightly to water rates. Now, I've been incredibly busy this week, as have many councillors, I'm sure. After the briefing, I went away and looked at the water rates, and I was really surprised to see that they were so high. I did a tiny bit of research, and forgive me, Chair, I would have done a lot more had the week not been so busy with meetings. But I found public toilets in much busier areas than Boston. You know, I'm talking about South Hams, where I go on holiday every year, where it's hugely popular. And their water rates were nowhere near this sort of high. So I just wonder if perhaps we've got a leak somewhere.
Adrian?
Well, I'm not sure how to answer it, Chair. It's possible. It's possible. I wouldn't really know, but if you can forward me the information that you've got so we can compare, then we'll look at comparing and contrasting and see if there is a significant difference or not.
Yeah, of course I will. And perhaps then the last question I've got on this point is around the number of visitors to the public toilets. Do we know how many people use them per year, per annum?
I would have to refer you to Phil on that one. I know you were busy working, Phil, but sorry about this, but I don't know the numbers of toilets. I'm hoping you might.
Now, there is a charge, so there will be it's a 20p charge. So in theory, we should be able to work out the sort of numbers through the charge made. However, during COVID, there will be changes because there was times when the charge wasn't levied, you know, during certain periods. So income will sort of give an idea of how many people go through and use the toilets. Just regards things like water, it depends as well where the toilets are connected to, because it could be connected to Central Park. So there will be water rates that might be off meters in the park, which will feed the park and the toilet. Yeah, so there are other considerations that might come into play when you look at the budget, because it'll still be put against that toilet if that's where the meter is. But there might be watering, of course, beds and other things as well in that area. So I just thought
that skews the number then, doesn't it?
That's a bit. We'll have to check. We'll have to have a chat with the property services. That's what Adrian. When Adrian's come back, we'll have a look at a couple of these things for you, just to give you an idea.
Thank you.
Just to give it context,
sorry, just to give it context on the water rates being so high. The one of the toilets I looked at in near Salcombe in Devon they had over 100,000 visitors a year, and their water rates were about £5,000, I think. So I would be surprised if we have 100,000 visits to our toilets a year. Perhaps I'm wrong though.
Well, based on the income, it appears that the numbers are somewhere around 70,000. But if, like as I was saying, if you forward what you've got for us, we'll do an analysis of that.
Sure, we'll do. Okay, and then looking at the, is it all right to continue, Chair?
Indeed, please.
I'm not going to drill down into the whole thing. Under the events then, the next column down, we'd event costs at 41,500. What were those specific events?
The events was as the breakdown, which was reported to BTAC with the breakdown of costs, was involved in that report. We'd have to go back and get the report out, but it was costed through in terms of the full events. We'd have to refer back to that report.
Okay, that's come to BTAC before.
Yeah, the budget for the events was approved by BTAC.
Yes, I know.
So that's what this would be replicating.
Okay. I just thought this financial year they'd all been cancelled, that's all.
Yeah, this is.
Yeah. Sorry, Adrian.
Yeah, sorry, this was the budget we're setting for 21-22.
I know, but I thought even going forward, I thought we were treading very carefully and not committing money.
Yeah, we would normally we would still set the budget, and then we would come back. And what Christina will do, she's due to report again. I believe, Chairman, is it the next meeting or the?
It's the next meeting or the meeting after.
Yeah, on the position. But the budget, we still set the budget, and then the budget will be reviewed as the year goes forward, depending on the circumstances. Because at the moment we don't know what the potential events we may be able to put on, or until as we go forward in the year, we'll get to know that. So
Okay.
this will be reviewed, and the report will deal with that element for your decision making at the time.
Thank you.
Tim may be able to clarify here, but it looks to me like because the amount is the same every year, you have a budget within your overall budget for this, and then you work around that budget. So the budget drives the events, not the other way around.
Thank you. And moving further down, we've got personnel and training. So I take it that might just be personnel based on the previous answer. And then we've got transformation. I wondered if you could speak to that budget at £1,500.
It's at the bottom, Tim.
Again, Councillor, what I would suggest with all the support services, that will be a service that sits somewhere, a internal team that sits somewhere within the council and is recharged to this service on that basis. Again, I'd have to go back and look at how that team is allocated to this service to give you a definitive answer there.
Okay, thank you. So I'm going to leave it there because I know other councillors will want to speak. But before I do, Chair, I would like to move an amendment that and I'm going to repeat what I said to Order and Governance, our residents need a break. We've suffered terribly through COVID, all of us, and we've got funding in the budget to fund a zero increase, not have an increase. That's an oxymoron, isn't it? So I would like to move an amendment that we don't have an increase this year. We collect the same amount as we collected last year, and give our residents a break. And I'll leave it there, Chair. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Dorian, thank you very much. Is there a seconder for that proposal?
I would like to second that, Mr. Chair, if I can.
Thank you, Neil.
Yeah, may I come in there?
Yes, by all means.
When Councillor Dorian did raise this at Audit and Governance, it was in relation to Boston itself, to which I did make the point that Boston faces challenges going forward into the future, £700,000 worth of reduction to find in its budget. So in my view, it would be irresponsible to not have an increase in the council tax going forward. However, in terms of the proposal for BTAC, that doesn't hold any water, so I wouldn't make that proposal. So I do have a different opinion for BTAC, in that BTAC can afford a council tax freeze. So I haven't got any issues with what Councillor Dorian is proposing there from a financial viewpoint.
Thank you. Stephen, Councillor Woodley.
Thanks, Chairman. Thank you, Chairman. I'm just looking through this, and I couldn't see the income from the toilets. If 70,000 people use the toilets this year,
I think there's a figure. There's a figure in there for 14,000. So if you go about halfway down page 30, I think it is.
Yes.
At the bottom,
charges.
Just right at the bottom of public conveniences, there's an amount in there for 14,000.
So that's quite a reasonable. That's quite a take, isn't it? Reasonable take. £14,000. So for
20 pence a visit, that's roughly £70,000, assuming everybody pays that goes to the toilet.
Yes, well, one assumes that because one might let in 5 or 6 others, in which case it wouldn't apply. What about damage? Have we suffered any damage to the toilets this year?
Well, there is occasionally damage to the toilets, and that's why there is a repairs and maintenance for it.
Right. Has there been any damage this year? That was a question.
I'd have to refer to Tim on that one.
The thing is, of course, because we're a committee of the Borough Council, we're not permitted to go out to tender for anything, aren't we? So we have to accept whatever the Borough Council decides are the costs and so on, the fees, etc., etc. So we are actually restricted in that. If we were a town council, we could go out to tender and ask for different people to do different things, and so on. But because we are a committee of the Borough Council, we're required to use the services of the Borough Council. And that is the way it is. Isn't that correct, Mr. Sibley?
I think you're just referring to the support service recharges, aren't you?
Well, it would be in terms of anything, wouldn't it? We are a committee of the Borough Council, so we have to use Borough Council staff in every respect.
Well, for instance, if you wanted to buy something, you could procure that. But if you're talking about the services that the council provides to you, yes, that's an in-house provider, which you are obliged to pay for that in-house rather than go externally.
Yes, we can't go externally. So in other words, for clean the toilets and so on, or whatever it is, say clean the toilets, an example of it, we would have to go through the council to purchase that particular function. We couldn't go out to tender.
The reason why you couldn't put a proposal in to subcontract or sublet the cleaning of the toilets rather than employ labour direct, that's an option that's available to the council. Whether other members would want to go down that route or not is a different matter, but there's nothing to stop that being looked at as a proposal.
Because if we were a town council, we could go for grant aid, couldn't we, for certain functions, which is not open to us, is it? If for instance, you know, like villages have playing fields and they can go to get grants from various functions, so to be able to maintain it. We are restricted in that regard, aren't we? We can only work with the money we've got.
I have to say, Councillor, I don't know what grants that parishes are able to go for that the council can't, so I won't be able to comment on that.
Right. Okay. I'm very sympathetic to the message put for the proposal put forward by Councillor Dorian. Obviously, you know, in the past we haven't always increased our precept, and then subsequently we have had to consider a significant increase to make up for it. But I think Councillor Dorian is quite right. The public are suffering very greatly at the present time. Unemployment is definitely going to rise. The situation is pretty critical in this country, and I think if we can hold off on a rise for ourselves, you know, for BTAC, then I think that's a good way to go forward. We don't actually really need this extra little bit of money. We've got a huge amount of money coming in from all sorts of directions, and we've got a very, very healthy balance. So we don't need this year an increase. Next year is a different matter. Next year can look after itself. But I think currently there's no requirement for us to have an increase. So 0% is quite a reasonable thing to do. It will be true for every other year, but certainly for this year, 0% increase, no problem as far as I'm, because it's only £14,000, isn't it? The extra income would bring in £14,000. Well, that's £14,000, but we have over £100,000 in our bank account, probably more. We don't need to do it this year. The only beneficiary, only beneficiary of any more money would of course be the Borough Council, because the money is held in the Borough Council's account. So an extra 14 grand, supposedly for ourselves, actually sits in the Borough Council's coffers. So perhaps we deny the Borough Council the £14,000. But there we are. Thank you, Chair.
Chair, I would point out that interest rates are so unbelievably low at the moment that £14,000 would barely represent £1 worth of interest to the council. We are talking pounds, not anything significant.
I'm not talking about the interest, Mr. Sibley. Yes, I'm talking about the fact that the money sits in the accounts, doesn't it? So money sits in the accounts. So it's an extra £14,000 that's technically available to the council, because we're only a committee of the Borough Council, and it's only by agreement that we have some control of our funds. Borough Council could take all that money tomorrow if it wanted. Anyway, thank you, Chairman. It's true, isn't it, Mr. Chairman Sibley? It's true. They could.
Sorry, the point I was trying to make is that you were making the point that £14,000, the only beneficiary of that really is the council, because it sits in their accounts waiting for them to invest it. The point I was trying to make is that the interest that's available on £14,000 is negligible. Having said that, as I said earlier, I don't have any issue if the committee decides to have a council tax freeze for this year. I do agree with the sentiment that it's got significant amounts of reserves going forward, and you wouldn't wish to do this every year. The only thing I would add to that is just to put it in perspective. The 1.91% increase represents £1.48 to the Band D property per year.
Yes, I quite agree, but it's still, for those people who are hard pressed at the present time, a few pence can mean a great deal.
I understand that entirely. All I'm doing is providing you with the background information.
I understand that, Mr. Sibley. It's no criticism to yourself.
No,
I'm just fighting in the corner for my residents. But there's no criticism for yourself. You're doing an excellent job. Yes, excellent. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Stephen. Anton, Councillor Danny.
Thank you. Sorry. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I will just go to page 29 and the Boston Town Area Committee draft budget 21, 22, 23. I would just like to have some explanation from either Mr. Sibling or Mr. Sampson about play areas fencing, because we have £510 for the next 5 years. Can just have some explanation on that, and give us probably some explanation as well on the figures, because we have some figures here. We have employers cost, which is 10,410 at the first row. Premises repairs and maintenance, electricity. If we can get an, how to get to 94,670.
Yes.
Because I've been calculating a bit, but I couldn't get through it. So
I'm going to have to refer to Tim on that one.
Thank you for the question. Yes, there'll be within that 94,670. Majority of that, of course, is the grounds maintenance recharge. So that again is an allocation of the grounds maintenance from the council for the open spaces. So it's an apportionment coming across from the centre. Again, it's an overhead recovery from the council into the BTAC areas.
Because the 94, if you do your calculation on 94 on that table, it doesn't match. I don't know how you got to 94.
On appendix 1 under open spaces.
Yeah.
Well, it's simplistically that the totals from the repairs and maintenance costs going down to the grounds and maintenance. Is that?
That's 73,260.
Plus 14,850, 940 and 2,590, etc. It's the addition of those 7 numbers above it.
The next 7 numbers.
The 7 numbers above it. The 94,670 is a subtotal.
Yes.
Of the premises.
You did have me worried for a minute there, but I have added them up and they do equal 94,670.
That's perfect. Okay, why I'm going to that one, because we have here, I think we have business rates, which is going to be increased in the next 5 years. And there is at the bottom is income, which is we have a rent from a kiosk. And I can see that that kiosk is paying the same amount of money for the next 5 years. If our rates and our bills goes higher, why does the rent of the kiosk doesn't go higher as well? And the other question, which will be related to that kiosk, that this kiosk pay for their own bills, energy bills, or they're included with the rent?
Well, I would suggest that that's a question for the budget holder, Phil, whether you deem appropriate to increase the fees for the kiosk holder or not, based on the fact that there's inflationary pressures from business rates and whether they get their separate bills for utilities or not. We would be purely taking a financial view here, and this is what the budget holder is telling us, that the income will be over the next 5 years. Should they deem to be increased, then that's up to Phil to answer.
Yes.
Sorry, I'm not actually the budget holder, so I couldn't tell you. It's it'd be an operations question, but I've written it down to take it away and add that to the list of things we're reporting back on.
Because I would like to know why we don't increase the rent while everything it will be increased basically. And that kiosk is not well maintained in the park. It doesn't look good. It looks shabby. It's never been open. I don't know why. I mean, it's there, but it's not used as probably an asset to the park. It doesn't add anything, to be honest with you, but then the rent doesn't go up. That's the things I think we're here. We can increase the rent, and I will agree with my colleague councillors, instead of increasing this precept of the council tax for this year. I think if we increase the rent and some things in other areas, it's like 20p for the toilets. Wherever you go, some places they pay 50p. And 20p, I think, is too low, because for the maintenance, we are paying so much money. In my opinion, and I'm sorry to say, we are wasting so much money by giving so many things in a low prices. I think it's time probably to increase certain things. I think 50p for a toilet will be better. If we do 70,000 visitors, that's at least give us a good amount of money. At least £35,000, that probably will cover something. The kiosk should be rented probably at probably double that price, in my opinion, because it's place of business and the people should maintain it and keep it open.
Well, I can certainly take your points back to the budget holder about increasing the rent. In terms of increasing the fees for the toilets, that's a council committee decision that you would have to propose and get support for.
Probably. Thank you, yeah, Adrian. Well, thank you for the moment, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Adrian and Phil, for the answers. And I may come back later.
Thank you, and thank you, Mr. Mayor. Martin, Councillor Griggs, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. First of all, I completely disagree with Anton's point about increasing the toilets. The kiosk I'm more than happy to look at on a business case basis. But my understanding was when we introduced the fees for the toilets, that it's not actually to recoup any of our money. It's more to maintain a level of service, because vandals generally won't pay 20p to go in and break something. But if it's open free of charge, as we encountered when we trialled them being open, they get vandalised quickly and it costs a lot to repair. So I'm all in favour of keeping the toilets at 20p or halving it to 10p, because, you know, especially for those who are infirm and need the toilet, or like myself, have young children that can't hold it for very long. You know, you may not have a 50 pence piece kicking around all the time, but you might have 20p. Or, you know, if you're struggling financially, you might be able to, you know, siphon 20p together and go get change from a shop, whereas 50p, it starts becoming a noticeable amount and something people have to consciously ensure they have. Other than that, yeah, I'm more than happy to support Councillor Dorian's proposal. She stole my thunder a bit. I'm sure most of you remember last year I advocated a 0% increase. Obviously, we weren't expecting the COVID year we had, but I made similar points to Councillor Dorian and other councillors, like Councillor Woodliff as well, that we have plenty in reserves. I completely disagree about taking money off residents of the borough if we're not spending it. If we're taking it, providing a service that's crucial, by all means, in affluent times, take extra. But at present, yeah, I will definitely be supporting Councillor Dorian's proposal. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Martin. Councillor Rush, Brian, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The first thing I'd like to say really is, and I'm not slighting Councillor Danny, but I just worry about his concerns about the catering industry, when in fact he's in there, and maybe that's just treading on thin ice a little bit. No disrespect to him, and I'm not trying to get at him, but I think there's a point to answer here. I've listened intently to the figures, and I have to be honest, I'm not one of these bookkeepers. I'm not quite as clever with figures as maybe some of my colleagues are, but it does concern me somewhat when I hear officers, and again, no slight on anyone's presentations, but we've had two issues here. We've had a meeting the other evening, which I'm not entirely comfortable with now. I went very happily, and then the more I sat there, the more I worried about what was being asked of us, really. I don't know which councillor it was that said something about, the public need to know what we're doing. And I got a sort of a very cold feeling down my spine that maybe we were doing things a little behind closed doors. I'm positive that wasn't the intention, but the perception is that it seemed that way. And I just wonder if the officers had a sort of a bit of an idea that they could tease out some of the more prickly questions that the committee might have had, and before going to full committee, which would have been obviously covered by all the media across the country, because it is a very important BTAC committee. But I do think that really we maybe some more analysis should be done. I think that Mr. Sibley mentioned something about when a question was asked about quite a large figure, he sort of played a ball in field and said, well, it's not really my bag, or we haven't done it. I'm sorry if I'm misquoting you, Mr. Sibley. It's a conversation piece. But I do think that we ought to come a bit more prepared. And maybe we would come here with less questions if analysis was done. So, Mr. Chairman, the question I've got really is, how much analysis do the officers in the departments do before we get to committee? Because sometimes I worry when questions are battered into the wings, really.
Yeah, there's a couple of points there, if I can come in. Firstly, in terms about briefing and behind closed doors, and then tonight's meeting, Tim and I did have a conversation actually on Tuesday following this, because it appears to me that you're doing the same meeting twice, more or less. The idea of Monday's meeting is if there are any detailed questions that you want to know or want answering, then we will go ahead and do that. But the meeting takes the same form on a Wednesday as well. So to my mind, there seems little point in having a members session, because you could be doing the same thing tonight, and you could argue that tonight's the right time to do it because it is in front of the public and press. I'm a little bit worried that the press from the entire nation is watching us now. I do feel a little bit more nervous. About 5 minutes ago.
I hope you didn't take me too seriously.
The other question about analysis is officers will give you any analysis you want. So if there's something that's not there specifically that you want, we will provide it. But the danger is that we provide pages and pages of analysis and you don't need it. So it's a difficult balance to make, but by all means suggest further analysis and we will provide it in the future. In terms of the detail that we go into, what will happen is the accountant will sit down with the budget holder each year and they will go through every line of these estimates. They will look at the outturn from last year. They will look at what's required for this year and they will then put it all together in a paper. And then I will look at the summary of that. I won't go through every single line because the recharge that you're getting for certain areas, let's say £5,000 for accountants this time, would suddenly be about £15,000. And then you would be up in arms about the amount of recharges that you're getting from the finance team. So there's a balance to be struck between the level of detail which you want Tim and myself to look at and the amount of information you want us to provide. But I'm more than happy to provide whatever you want us to provide, but you just need to tell us what that is. Otherwise, we're sort of fishing in the dark a little bit.
Mr. Chairman, can I go on?
Yes, please.
I take your point entirely, and as I say, it's not a slight on anyone's sort of abilities in doing their job. It's just that, you know, when someone like me looks at all these figures, it is quite mind-blowing, really. And when I hear an officer say, I haven't got those figures, I'll get them to you, it kind of makes a bit of a slight on the fact that we're in full view of the public. I wonder what the public's perception is then. So, but I know, yeah, you make a good point. I mean, you can't troll through all the figures all of the time every few months for BTAC analysis. But there are, I think, some of the members have made some really, really valid points there, and you have accepted them. I know that, but you know, maybe some way that we do analyze them a bit deeper, or probably the more expensive ones are the ones that people would worry about, rather than the mundane and whatever. But I mean, I do believe that you do a great job. I would just like to think that we could dig a bit deeper, maybe, and be really open so that the public are happy. Really, thank you very much.
The only other point I can suggest, Chair, is that if councillors, when they get the papers through, if they've got any concerns that we may not be able to answer because we don't sit there and hold the detail for every single line, if you email us before the meeting and then ask us the question at the meeting, we can easily prepare the answer of that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I thought that was the whole purpose of the briefing, so that not to hold things in secret, but so that members could ask some of these questions that they haven't got the answers for this evening, and ask them then re-ask them this evening, and the answers could have been given in the public arena, which may have been just as helpful as you not being able to answer them now. But that was my thought on the briefing. I'm happy not to have them. It's as you say, it's just a rerun of this evening's meeting. Councillor Stevens, Yvonne, please.
Thank you, Chairman. I've got 2 points, that's all. With what Councillor Danny was saying about raising the cost of using a public toilet to 50p, my goodness, I think that's horrendous. I think 20p is bad enough, but I realise that we need to have a 20p to stop the vandals getting in. But I would definitely be against putting the toilets up to 50p or any more than 20p. But secondly, I would like to support Councillor Dorian. I think what she says this evening is absolutely fair and good for our town. So she's got 100% support from me. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Yvonne. Councillor Hasty, Neil, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The reason I backed Councillor Dorian is because I'd rather have any money that would have gone on the council tax increase to stay in our residents' pockets after the hard year they've had. The second point about the council toilets, Them going up to 50p, I couldn't think of anything worse with the town, because less and less people want to use them. And the third point, and this has got me quite, I don't know whether you would say concerned or worried, but it's about a remark that Councillor Danny said about the kiosk, inquiring whether to raise their rent and asking if they paid for extra services. Now, this could come across as him trying to increase the rent of a business that could be perceived as competition for his own. So I was wondering if Councillor Danny could explain that. And can I ask, should he have declared an interest that he had a business within the same sort of like remit as a kiosk before he brought up the subject about raising their rent, please? Thanks.
We could, but I think that's is the fact that Councillor Danny owns a cafe is on his members' declaration of interest. And I mean, I'm happy for him to answer for himself, but I don't really see as that's actually relevant to this budget debate.
I can answer him. I can answer Mr. Chairman, if you allow me. I act on BTAC as a councillor who lives in his ward, and he lives in the town of Boston. I walk around the town almost on a daily basis, Councillor Hasty, and I'm talking about something which could be of an asset to the town and to the park. Unfortunately, it's left shabby and dirty. If you cannot see it because you're not living in the town, well, that's your issue. But I act as a member of this town, as a resident who care about this town. I didn't disagree with my colleagues about the raise of 50p, but that's my point of view, and that's what I think. But I'm not holding any grudges against anyone for that. It's normal. That's a debate, and we are here to debate for the benefit of town. I don't have to call for an interest because I have a business or a cafe. My cafe is completely different than that one, so I'm not going to go to that side. So as I said, I think because everything, it goes every year up. It's a normal for things to go up. And I know what I'm talking about, because when you rent a place and the things goes higher, obviously your landlord will come and tell you we need more. And this is normal in businesses. I cannot see 5 years, the same place, it's not clean. Maybe you should go and take a walk and see what the parks needs. And I think then you will judge for yourself. I would like to see Boston as a clean, as prospective town who has amenities, and I would like to see it clean, and I would like to see that kiosk as well clean. So I will ask you, sorry, Mr. Chairman, I will advise you go and have a walk and see what it needs. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Danny. Like you, I walk through town every day, and I do know what the
Mr. Chairman, come back on
right.
that.
But all I will point out with the rent is that the draft estimates for the following years are just that, they're draft and they're estimates. If this committee wishes to put up rents, then that needs to be addressed in future years. So we can't really comment on although it's the draft is for that as an accountancy tool. It's not cast in stone. Only this budget today, when it's done, that is. So, have you got anything else you wish to add, Councillor Hasty? I mean, I'm getting a bit frustrated with members sort of attacking each other rather than talking about the budget.
It's just a quick remark, just to let Councillor Danny know, I'm down in the park and on my ward at least 3 or 4 times a week.
Thank you. Thank you for that, Neil. Councillor Evans, Deborah, please.
Hello. So I'm getting a bit exciting, but I'd just like to say that I am aware that Councillor Anton Danny does actually support other cafes, and he does he is a good support to other businesses. So I think it's maybe a bit, it's not quite the case what Councillor Hasty maybe thinks is his first remark. Right, toilets, well, I think we're penalising people for the vandals. I think when we actually did the trial, I was really happy we were doing a 3 months trial on having the toilets open, but they opened them for 24 hours. And as far as I can see, the vandalism happened at night. Why open them for 24 hours? I feel like it was a chance for them to get vandalised, so they didn't have to open them. You know, call me cynical, but I feel if the toilets were open and closed at a reasonable time, sort of as the shop shut, the vandalism wouldn't take care as much, and we shouldn't have to pay for vandals. As for the 20p's, I just reassure Councillor Woodliff, lots of people can't get in on 120p. It's 20p for a 2-year-old, it's 20p for a 3-year-old, 4-year-old, 5-year-old. So when you take your children to the toilets, you can't choose to leave them outside, you have to take them all in. And when you go to the park, believe you me, during the day, your children want to, when I was lucky, the toilets didn't charge when my children were little. They were in and out, going for a wee, especially when the toilet training. And it would have cost me, I don't know, £10 a day just to go and play in the park by the time my 4 were in and out. So I'm not happy with the 20p charge. I feel people feel like they're paying for something that had already come out of the taxes. It was something we had free toilets, and now we don't anymore. So I think it's a human need, and it should be free, so that those people that you see that can't afford to go, they'd stop going in the street. I think there would be a reduction in people going to the toilet in the street if they could actually go to a toilet. And you try and find a 20p when you need the toilet. Yeah, so that's, I think that was it really. Apart from, I'd like to support Councillor Dorian. I feel we have no choice. I think it's got to be 0%. We haven't really sort of spent what we would have spent, so I think we've got to sort of, we can't really put it up. I think it's just the only fair thing to do. And I do remember Councillor Gregg's bringing this up last year, and I do remember supporting that. So I'm very, very happy to support Councillor Dorian's proposal. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Evans. Councillor Woodliff. Stephen.
What about that, Chairman? Yes. Well, going back to Councillor Evans, I mean, if we want to propose that we cancel the costs, cancel the charge during the day in the park, fine. We've got no problem about that. I think it's probably a very good idea. We don't want people urinating in the flower beds, do we, or whatever, or anything like that, do we? So we could actually propose, couldn't we, that we don't place a charge on the use of the toilets in the park as a benefit for the children who use it that often. I'd see that Adrian's raising his hand right away about something about that.
Yeah.
I wasn't going to say that. What I was going to say, I found the Monday meeting very useful. I thought that Adrian's and Tim's presentation was excellent, and it helped me put some thoughts in my mind for tonight's meeting. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to spend as much time over this weekend reading up the papers that I would normally do for certain issues that arose at home. So it was a very, very useful meeting. I apologise to Tim and to Adrian for perhaps not reading the papers beforehand, but if you know what had gone on here, you perhaps have to understand why. I can't, it's a public meeting, so I can't say. I thought it was a very, very useful meeting. I would not want to see the meeting disappear. I know that some people might think it's a wasted meeting, but I don't think it was at all. The meeting was very well presented. It was very informative, and as always. So my congratulations go to Adrian and Tim for producing an excellent meeting, and for tonight. I hope that I'm not seeing being too petty tonight. So to go back to Councillor Evans' suggestion, if she wants to propose that we have no charge in the park during the day, and that'd be fine by me. I'll second her proposal. There you are, Councillor Evans. I'll second your proposal so that the families can have free access to toilets. At least during the summer, anyway. At least during the summer, why not? It'd be nice, wouldn't it? A nice benefit. I'm sure many people, many families would be very appreciative of that, so they could spend their 20p on ice creams at the kiosk rather than 20p on the toilets. I've got nothing more to say apart from that. That's fine. So it's over to you, Councillor Evans. You make a proposal, and I'll second it. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you.
Sorry, thank you.
You want to come in there, Adrian?
If I may, please, Chair, there are 3 comments there. Firstly, I can't take any of the credit for tonight or Monday. Tim's done most, if not, well, he's done all of it. I'll be honest, I can't say I've done any of it. Tim's done pretty much all of it, Tim and his team. So the thanks should go to Tim, really. The second point that you make about, well, I don't know what to do now about whether we have 2 meetings next year or 1, because some members say that we don't want to, we're better off having 1. Some members are saying we have 2. So we'll probably have a conversation with the chair, if that's all right with you, Chair, halfway through the year and decide what you want to do. It's your decision as the chair, obviously. The third point is one about toilets. Now, council tax, if you're not going to increase that next year, and that's a one-off, I have no issue with that. Taking away the toilet fees is something you're taking out of the budget for the next number of years indefinitely. So you're reducing your budget accordingly. So if you're going to do that and take that out your budget, then you have to take something else out to compensate for that. So you have to find the expenditure saving elsewhere. Otherwise, you've got an imbalance going forward.
Yeah, thank you for that, Adrian. I think we all realise that. Well, I hope we do anyway.
The point I'm trying to make, Chair, is you can't just make a decision saying, let's reduce that, let's reduce that. It's irresponsible to do that if you're not going to say where the savings is going to come from.
Yeah, again, I appreciate that, but it's been, I mean, obviously the way forward would be to increase the council tax levy to actually cover it, wouldn't it? But there you go. That's not my decision at the minute. We can actually look at what you're saying if that proposal is put forward and carried, can't we? Yeah, right. It's not been moved and seconded anyway yet. It's been seconded by Stephen. Councillor Hasty, Neil.
I completely support the park toilets becoming free to use. I'm about being left open overnight when most of the vandalism is taking place. Would it be possible to work into the costings of locking the park gates at night or blocking the toilets at the same time?
I'm sure it would. I'm sure it would. I mean, effectively, they're locked in the evening anyway. And well, the park toilets aren't open because we can't open them because of COVID restrictions at the moment. So they're actually closed. But the point's well made, yeah. And Councillor Dorian.
Thank you, Chairman. First of all, I want to apologise to the committee because I quoted a figure earlier that was completely wrong. Still less than our water charges, though. I've just pulled up that document that I was researching. I actually did it in bed the other night, so I was really tired. The cost of the toilets for 100,000 people was just over 13,000, not just over 3,000. So I'd missed the one off, and I apologise to the committee. I wouldn't want to mislead them, but still significantly lower than ours for 70,000 visits. And I'd also would like to support, in the spirit of camaraderie, Councillor Evans and Councillor Woodliff and Councillor Hasty, that if we can, we neuter the cost of visiting the park toilets more than the other 2 locations, because that's where children play. So I think I would ask, Chair, that we have that costed, the option of just taking out the cost of the park, leaving in the Bargate roundabout toilets and the bus station toilets, and then the committee can move forward with concrete information. And I will forward you that report, Mr. Sibley.
Thank you. Chair, if it helps, I wouldn't. The trouble is, if you make a decision tonight about reducing toilet fees, you also need to tell me where you want to make the saving from in the budget. Otherwise, you won't be producing a balanced budget going forward. So I'll just make that point again. You can't just take income out without taking a compensating saving. Going back to Councillor Dorian's point, I'm more than happy to come back to the next BTAC meeting and provide those costings with potential options so that you can then make a more informed decision.
Okay, yeah, thank you, Aidan. Well, it hasn't actually been moved yet. Lots of people have been seconding it and supporting it, but nobody's moved it. So at the it's totally theoretical at the moment. Councillor Griggs. Martin.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. It may be of some help to committee if Mr. Perry can shed some light, because I believe toilets were in his remit then when we did the trial for free, as to when the vandalism took place. But I'm more than happy to propose Councillor Dorian's proposal, or let her do it and me second it, that a report comes to BTAC looking at the potential for making park toilets free, obviously once they're back open.
Chairman, if you wouldn't mind, Chairman, I'd rather Councillor Griggs, I'd rather let Councillor Evans do that, because she's been working very hard on this initiative.
I don't mind. Whoever wants to propose it may, and if we don't need a seconder, I won't second it, and if we do, I'm more than happy to.
Thank you. Thank you for that, Martin. You, Stephen, Councillor Woodliff.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, I mean, I'm happy to go along with whatever everybody else wants to do. I just wondered in relation to yourself, Adrian, that I'm just reading about this £120,000 of unallocated reserves on the 31st of March. So where's the problem? I just kept feeling that, you know.
The issue is, Councillor, that straight away, what we're saying is of that 120, 70,000 is your recommended minimum balance. So you're only really talking about 50,000 that you've got to play with. Straight away, if you don't have the council tax increase or a council tax freeze, because it is an oxymoron, as Councillor said earlier, then that takes £14,000 off that 50,000 straight away. So you're down to £36,000. If you reduce toilet fees, then one of the options you could say is let's deplete reserves until they're depleted, but they would then be depleted below minimum balances in 3 years. So when I bring that paper, that would be one of the options that I would bring forward. But you're also, the reserve only lasts so long. Once it's been spent, it's gone. It would only cover it for 2 or 3 years, potentially, until we do the figures. The other option is that moving forward, that you might say, well, okay, let's reduce the events budget, and that would be one of the options as well that you'd look at, or something like that. But you're quite right, there is the option of depleting reserves until those reserves have gone.
Yes, I'm not suggesting, I can't imagine that not charging for the park toilets would deplete the £35,000. I think, was it left over, wasn't it, or something?
Well, the charges that we get income for toilets is I think I said 14,000 earlier.
Right.
Don't know what proportion of that is for the park or at this point in time. So I don't know whether it's a significant proportion of it or only a third or less. So at this point,
well, we could say it's about £10,000, couldn't we? That on the basis that's the others deliver 4,000 between them, and that's 10,000. But I would thought actually we got enough money in the bank to be able to cope with that. I understand the bits about balancing the budget and all the rest of that's quite right. You're absolutely correct on that. Well, you do have quite a large unallocated budget, and I think actually they were talking about other funds coming on top the other night, wasn't it?
Yes, there's two things that aren't sorry, I thought you'd finish. I beg your pardon. There's two things that aren't in the budget at the moment. There's £20,000 that referred to on Monday night, which is the reason why it's not in the budget is because you haven't had the money. It's not been it's been confirmed, but it hasn't been the memorandum of understanding hasn't been signed back, so it's not gone through due process at the moment. There's £20,000 coming from the Community Champions funding, which was a grant that the council bid for. That's a one-off pot of £495,000, of which there's £20,000 of that which is being allocated for BTAC for things like grants and things like that. Is my understanding of what it's earmarked for. Also, as Councillor Goodale pointed out on Monday, each councillor is to be given a £1,000 allocation to spend as well next year. Now, again, the details of it have to come out, but I think my understanding of it is that is mainly for community interest groups and that type of thing, which members see fit. So there might be a local scout group or something like that, for argument's sake, that you might want to support, or an initiative that's taking place that you might want to support out of your allocation. So what those are amounts for. They would be separate to what your base budget is going forward.
Yes. Thank you very much, Steve, for explaining all that. I mean, you're quite right. I think you did say that on Monday night, actually. So, yes, thank you very much. Yes, sorry. Am I interrupting anybody?
Sorry, it was me interrupting you, Councillor Woodliff. Sorry.
Anytime.
I was I was just going to ask, Chairman, if I could just say that procedurally, I think it would be more appropriate for, as Adrian suggests, that a report comes back with the costings and options about opening the toilets or making them free, because that isn't the purpose of the report tonight. And if the public knew that this was going to be debated, you know, somebody might have submitted a question or so on. So it's not the published business of tonight's meeting.
I appreciate that, Jeanette, and that's what we're moving to, having a recommendation for if somebody proposes it. At the minute, there has been no proposal.
Can I propose that, Mr. Chairman?
Well, I think Councillor Evans is going to propose it in a minute.
Let's get on with it. Let's get on with it.
Well, people, I'm just going through people who are wanting to speak.
I want to speak, yeah.
As happy to get on with it as everybody else. Councillor Evans, Deborah, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you for your patience as well. I would like to propose a report came back, just as Jeanette said. I think it's great that there's definitely interest within the group to look at it. I appreciate we can't just suddenly take that lump of money away without actually having a report. So I'd like to propose that we had a report comes back to BTAC so we can look at ideas and see a way forward. If that's okay. Do I need to add anything else to that, Chairman?
No, it's all right. Jeanette will flare it up for you.
Thank you.
And Martin seconded it, so it's been moved and seconded. So that will be added to the recommendations. Councillor Stevens, Yvonne.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm pleased that this is going to be, a report is going to come back to us, but I must admit I am against doing free toilets just for the simple worry of the vandalism that could happen and the cost that has been incurred in the past for the council. So I'll just put it on record that I'm against doing free toilets. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Yvonne. Brian, Councillor Rush, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I would like to sort of applaud Mr. Sibley for the way he's approached this. I think the answer is that we do have to have the information, and I think we have to have all the options, to be honest. And I think so going forward, I'm very prepared to support the proposal. And of course, this has been an emotive subject for a long time in this town, and I know they're highly sort of expensive to run. If I could just promote one thing to Mr. Sibley or whoever's doing the analysis, that maybe we ought not to be so dependent on pottery pot type toilets and get something that's a bit more resistant to vandalism. But certainly, so metal is what my preference would be. And frankly, you know, I think that the park is a certainty that we really do need to provide that amenity within the park. As for the other ones, you know, I'll give it or take it. But certainly the park, where there's mothers and children and older people and people meandering through there, right through the good weather that we all hope we'll get. But I honestly, I support Mr. Sibley's what would you call it, proposal of going forward, really, about how we're going to analyse the best way to approach this issue and then resolve it as a community, because that's what it's about. It's not a political thing. This is about the community that we serve, and I think we should be very, very sympathetic to their what would you call it, cross legs, if you like. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. Anton, Mr. Mayor, Councillor Danny.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just coming to the toilets, I just would like to remind my colleagues today here, as we are passionate about the toilets, yes, it will be nice to have them for free. It will be nice to see nice toilets in our town. But just bear in mind that the two toilets at the park, they are out of the park. They are not within the park. They are just by the gates. So my issue here, as a father, as a parent, can you imagine a young lady with her baby in the toilet, or she is going in the toilet and found somebody injecting himself? As we know, there is a lot of people who are homeless and they're always around that areas. That's my worry as a father, as a parent. I wouldn't like that my wife go with the baby to the toilet to find somebody doing something. And that's my worry for the toilet. It's a nice idea to have them for free, but I will go with the recommendation of Councillor Evans. Yes, we should have some numbers and some figures and see where we go from here. That's my concern. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Danny. I mean, I think we're all aware that the toilets themselves won't be free to us, because obviously the park toilet has an attendant who actually monitors them on. So obviously to us there'll be a cost, and that's just that we're willing to provide that facility for the residents of the town. So that's fine. I'm on the 20,000. I can update members on that. I did say that we would I'll be able to clarify what that's to be spent on, and I've spoken to Michelle Howard, and it has to be spent on COVID related issues. Can't be spent on anything else. It has to be COVID related, and to that extent, a report will come back to this committee after, well, March meeting possibly, or maybe the one after that, because it has to be, it's not part. I wondered if we could actually include it in our budget and just move it to something else, but apparently we can't. It has to be spent totally on COVID related issues. As I understand, the £1,000 for members for their wards also has to be spent on COVID related issues. So we will see how that goes. But the £20,000 is definitely has, as a fund, is very prescriptive on how it has to be spent, and a report will be coming to the committee hopefully in March. But as Adrian said, we haven't actually got the money yet, so at the minute it's although it's been agreed in principle, we haven't actually got it yet. So, but when we get it, we will have to decide where we're going to spend it. And it's a very short timescale, I understand. But I mean, Martin will probably be more involved in bringing it back with Michelle to another meeting. That's the 20,000. I mean, as far as the zero increase in council tax for the authorities concerned, if that's what members request, that we actually save the ratepayers of Boston that amount of money, then that's fine. I don't have a problem with that. But I have to say, I am ambitious for this committee and ambitious to do things. And although I appreciate the sentiment and that we can move forward in other years, you know, my thoughts were looking at sort of employing people to look at, as maybe employing people to try and do something about the fly tipping and that sort of thing. But anyway, never mind. That can wait for another day. Do we have the recommendations, Jeanette, please?
Chairman, yes, I was going to suggest it seems to be the consensus of the meeting that Adrian does report back on the costings and options for making the toilets free of charge. But I can take a formal vote if you wish.
No, I'm happy that comes back to the next meeting, providing Adrian's happy with that.
Yeah, that's fine.
Seconded.
It's fine with me.
Thank you, Chairman. In that case, the only proposal on the table then is the proposal for a 0% increase in council tax, meaning a BTAC Band D charge of £75.51. That's been proposed and seconded. So if I can move to the vote, I'll ask Pippa if she can take the vote, and if members could indicate whether they are for, against, or wish to abstain. Thank you, Pippa.
Thank you. Councillor Anton Danny.
I fully supported. 4.
Councillor Andorian.
4.
Councillor Deborah Evans.
4.
Yourself, Chair.
I'll agree with the rest of the committee. 4.
Councillor Martin Griggs.
4.
Councillor Neil Hasty.
4.
Councillor Martin Howard.
4.
Councillor Brian Rush.
4.
Councillor Yvonne Stevens.
4.
And Councillor Stephen Woodliff.
4.
That's carried, Chair.
Thank you for that, Pippa. That's the final item on the agenda now. Obviously, is the work programme. I mean, I do have an apology for Councillor Dorian. She did actually move that we actually had Safe Streets on our agenda, and with Karen going off and Jeanette stepping back in, I have to say I have to hold my hands up and say my apologies. I let that slip, and it will be on March's meeting if we can arrange for that to happen. So my apologies to you, Anne, on that. I see you've indicated. So I'll ask you if you wish to comment. Anne, Councillor Dorian.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Thank you very much. Yeah, I appreciate that. I was going to, I figured something must have gone wrong. I knew you wouldn't ignore such an important project. I think you said State Street. That's the £1 million loan we have. It's the School Street.
Oh, School Street, sorry.
Yeah. So if that could come in March, that would be great. And just one other thing, Chair, when do you think we'll be getting that funding as ward councillors that we can spend? Have you got a date?
I don't have a date. I mean, Michelle, Michelle, we've been awarded them with the funding, and I assume it will come when the new budget starts. But at the moment, I don't have any date. I don't know if Mr. Perry has any idea, but I have no data when we will actually get the funding.
Chairman, I believe it's £1,000 week with all members, so it'll be something I imagine will go out as a member initiative at the earliest opportunity. I will ask Michelle to just to see if we can get some comms out this week, just to let you know what's coming, and we can have a look at it from that point. There are some criteria that she'll have to put together for you to try and help you in terms of how that can be spent. With the £20,000, that's I think she's looking to come to a report to the next meeting to help with some proposals through a grant fund, so yeah, I think on the agenda we're going to have to look at carefully about what we put on the next Marches, because it's quite a lot of the topics that have come up.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, I mean, we could, I mean, as a committee, we could consider pooling because it's only, I say it's £1,000 per member per ward. We could consider pulling it as BTAC or whatever. It's one of those things. I don't know when it's coming, but I know that from what Michelle said, it's reasonably prescriptive as to what we can spend it on. But I've asked her to actually send that to members so that they can actually look at it and assess what the options are, as it were.
Okay, I'm not having a party then.
I'm afraid not, no.
Thank you.
Unless it's COVID related. Stephen, Councillor Woodliff.
Chairman, I did just wonder, is there going to be any other business on this? It's not mentioned on the report. And you know, we have a little, there is an item that you and I know about that might be of interest to members of the committee.
Well, I was hoping you would raise it on this, because it's actually, but it's up to you. Yeah.
Right.
There's no any other business, but you can raise it on this item as I suggested to.
What? You mean right away?
Yes.
Right away. Oh, thanks very much. Thanks, Chairman. Well, the issue is this: that I received a message from a lad called somebody, can't call him a lad. It's a chap called Adam Hildred. Sorry, Adam Hildred was a former pupil of mine a long time ago when I worked at Boston Grammar School. Now he's involved with the Boston Squash Club, and they're looking to upgrade their facilities. They're not asking for any money from us, so you can rest easy on that one. But he asked for a letter of support, potential letter of support from myself. Well, I wondered actually whether or not we could all send, or the committee could send, a letter of support to the East Coast Communities Fund. It is basically so. The Boston Squash Club is putting in for a grant from the East Coast Communities Fund, and I've been asked to support it with a letter if necessary, and I will do. But I wondered if actually the members of the committee will be prepared to also, or the committee itself will be prepared to to authorise a letter of support in regard to the project. I'll read what it says, because I haven't read it quite as well as I should have done. Okay. The project involves a complete overhaul of 2 of the 5 squash courts, cosmetic grades to others, and a major upgrade of the shower system, which is not currently fit for purpose. We believe this upgrade to help the club as a real asset for the people of Boston. We have a membership of around 180 people, a successful community program, which involves junior coaching for around 30 children every week, visiting schools to deliver PE lessons where possible, etc. The club is run by volunteers, and it operates from the squash club at the end of Rosebery Avenue. You probably know about it. It's not particularly obvious, but it is up there. So it's in my ward, and it's in the borough of Boston. Now, they're not asking for any money. Adam's not asked for any money, but would like a letter of support. Now, I've said I'm quite prepared to write a letter of support, but I think it might strengthen things if the chairman could write a letter of support on behalf of the committee for this particular activity. I don't know how members feel about that, because I pass it over to you, but I think it's something we could support. It doesn't require any cash. It just requires, as far as I can see, a letter of support. The club itself is like to be able to provide most of the funding if it gets a grant from the East Coast Communities Fund. So it's a positive benefit for everybody in town, and all it would appear to be is it requires a support of this committee. I don't know how members feel about that, so I'll pass it over to members of the committee and to yourself, Chairman. And you know as well, because you've been involved in this, haven't you, Chairman?
Yes. Well, thank you. Yes, I mean, well, you did forward that letter on to me. I just suggest you raise it this evening.
Yes.
I did agree to send a letter of support as well. It's only if required. Obviously, it's not costing us anything. The squash club has been a long-standing part of the town, and at the end of the day, is an asset to the town. So I did agree to have my name put on the letter as supporting. But my understanding was it had to go in today. So it's just really Stephen's really advising you of that fact. But it had to go in today. I understand he filled the forms in and sent them off. And it's just that I personally I've agreed to support it if they require my support. Obviously, it would be nice to do it with the committee's blessing, but because it was such a short notice, nothing had come to you. So it's just really a question of supporting a club in the town, and but it's not actually going to cost us anything.
Yes, the letter says, doesn't it? Adam's written, my understanding of this, that it would not require much of you at this stage, only that the funding body might request a letter of support to confirm that you do indeed support our project if we were to be successful. So that's what Adam has said. So Adam Hildred is the former Boston Grammar School pupil that I taught many years ago, and he's written to asked me if I'll support it. I'm happy to do so, but I hope that other members will be prepared to allow the chairman to write on behalf of all of us, if required. Does it have anybody got any comment on that?
Thanks. Councillor Griggs, Martin.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I didn't originally raise my hand about this comment, although I'm more than happy to support the fact that if required, you write a letter on behalf of the committee. I would request Stephen didn't say many years ago, as I believe Adam was only the year above me at school, and I'm still desperately clinging on to my youth.
I do apologise, Martin.
That's quite all right. That's quite all right, Councillor Woodliff. My point was about what Councillor Dorian raised. Now, whilst it's not a specific answer for a question, just to highlight to members in case you've not had a chance to catch up with emails or you've missed it, there is a members briefing on Monday, the 22nd of this month, where we will go into far more detail and give specifics about what the money can be used for the £1,000 for each member, when you can start approaching people and saying, right, you can apply for that money now, etc. So more information will be available for all members on the 22nd, and obviously subsequently following that will be emailed around for any members who couldn't attend that briefing.
Thank you for that, Martin. I did miss that. Yeah, sorry. Thank you. Anton, Councillor Danny.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First of all, I just would like to express my support to these young men from grammar school. And I always support the community activities, sport events. I support other places, charities. If I have to donate some money, I do. So it's good to support the communities in Boston because it makes me feel that we are one community and we have one cause. And the cause is Boston to be prospective and to be prosperous and to be better. That's one thing. Secondly, just on the 24th of March, Mr. Chairman, if probably my colleagues will agree with me, I would love to have some update on the pandemic, COVID-19, because going to March, I think most of the people, they will have then the top up. So there is people in my ward, which is I talk to them probably twice a week. And we talk about the same subject, sometimes the COVID and the pandemic, what's happening. No, I don't. So there is these questions, but they would like to know more details on almost basically every week, sorry. So if I can just, add it, an update on the pandemic on the 24th of March and see how Boston is doing and how is the second top up going as well. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. I mean, I think there is it a briefing tomorrow? There is a briefing
tomorrow Thursday. We have flight tipping at 1 o'clock, and then there is a briefing tomorrow as well at 6:30
on COVID-19.
Yeah, so it's for us. So we see what they will tell us, and then from now to March, I think we still have.
Well, I'm
almost 2 months. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you, Anton. I'll look into that.
Thank you.
Yes, Phil.
Thank you, Jim. Sorry, I'm just looking for the 24th March agendas at the moment. We've got school streets, we've got events, we've got community champions pot, we've got a toilets report, and we've got Central Park security. That's quite a hefty agenda.
Yes, I know. We've probably, I mean, events can maybe go back one, if because it was only if Christina could actually get the reports together. Obviously, the situation is quite fluid there, isn't it?
It is. That makes perfect sense. If we could, we could put that back. That would ease the agenda a bit.
And then we'll have to have a look at some of the other ones. I mean, obviously, the park may have sorted itself out from this evening's meeting. I don't know, but we shall see. Yeah. Okay. We'll have to have a look at the work program and see if there's too. If we take the events out, we should have enough time, I think.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, the community champion pod, I think Michelle would like to just report on an opportunity, I think, which she's looking at the moment, which does look possible for us. So she's just doing a bit of an investigation, which I think members will find interesting. So that won't be a long report in theory, as long as everybody, is agreeable to the way forward. The toilets at Central Park then would be the options for Central Park. Of course, we will go back to our operations team and Christian to get a report prepared for that. And the toilets element will go to the property services, and Adrian, I said, we'll have a chat to them about, because there is some, I think we do need to revise the previous report on the vandalism that did occur, because it wasn't all at night. So there are some elements we need to consider. So we need to make sure members have the full information to be able to consider that fully.
Well, that's right. I mean, the only way to combat vandalism is to have them have attendance, isn't it? It's just that simple. Sorry.
Just to add that there may well be small grant applications as well.
Yes, there will, won't they?
Yes, there will. The community chance pot will be a grant application as well, so that would be that would come into the grants program. So we could probably maybe try and tie that all together if we can. We'll have a look afterwards, see if we can do that.
Okay, yeah, because effectively the small grants committee will meet, won't they, and that will come to. Yeah, okay. Well, we'll have to have a look and see what we can. If we need to shift something out, we'll have to, or maybe extend the meeting. I don't know.
Okay.
We'll have to see what comes up. Okay, then. All members happy? Thank you for that then.
Yes.
I'll close the meeting and say thank you all for your attendance. Thank you very much. And I shall see you all again very soon.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Mr. Chairman.
Chairman.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you. Bye-bye.
you.
Have a nice
Bye.
evening.
Thank
Bye.
you,
Thank you,
Mr.
Chairman.
Good night.
Everyone.